Hello friends! I'm so excited to be reviewing the second book in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series called The Tropic of Serpents. I reviewed her first book, A Natural History of Dragons, in my very first video about a month ago. Loved it, and I'm pleased to say that I think I enjoyed the sequel even more. This will be a spoiler-free review, assuming that you have read the first book. So if you're just perusing reviews of this series in general and don't want to be spoiled, you'll want to add this to your watch later list until you read the first book, because there will be spoilers of what happens in that book. So check out my review of that one linked down below. If that's the case, I highly recommend it. Okay, so once again, we are following the indomitable Isabella Camhurst a couple years after the events of the first book. She's working with a select few individuals to try and figure out a method of synthesizing artificial dragon bone, which is extremely lightweight and stronger than iron or steel, but degrades very quickly. This seems to be a potential overarching plot throughout the entirety of the series, so I wanted to mention it even though it has little direct bearing on the main plot in this book. So shortly after a setback in that research, Isabella leaves behind her infant son to go on another expedition, this time to the continent of Ariga, which is similar to Africa in culture, climate, geology, etc. She's joined by Tom Wilker, who is a character from the previous book, as well as Natalie Oscott, the granddaughter of Lord Hilford, who was Isabella's patron on this and the previous expedition. There are high political tensions in Ariga between the citizens of the country of Bayembe and the Ikwande people who occupy the country of Aramo to the south. And sandwiched in between them is the swampy region called Moulin, also known as the Green Hell, which is where the expedition eventually goes in search of moolish swamp worms to study and observe. The majority of the story takes place here in this humid and dangerous environment, and Isabella and her friends must survive this grueling, unforgiving, fantastical place in order to keep a promise to the ruler of Bayembe and discover the secrets of the swamp worms while navigating political waters as well. If you're looking at this second book hoping that it might have a bit more actual dragons in it than the first book did, you're probably going to be disappointed. You're reading about dragons through a naturalist lens. There's nothing magical about them as far as we know so far, and this book is all about people and their relationships to each other and to dragons as a driving and guiding force. I think that this is so unique and executed in a really smart and entertaining way, but it isn't for everyone. As before, dragons are important and make appearances, but they aren't ever present. But I highly recommend this if you enjoyed the first book. I really like experiencing the cultures of the indigenous peoples of Bayembe and Moulin, especially that of the Moolish within the Green Hell. Marie Brennan can really paint a picture, and the whole experience was so vivid and intense and uncomfortable. I live pretty far north of the equator, and that entire experience is so far removed from the climate and culture that Isabella and myself are familiar with. The closest I've been to a place like that is Costa Rica, and the humidity there was intense, but I had an air-conditioned hotel to return to and modern conveniences, so the party's trials and tribulations were miserable to read about, which is a compliment to the author, of course. There's also a handy map, and this was also in the first book as well, a map and illustrations by Todd Lockwood to further immerse you in the world and bring the people and places to life. And also, fun fact, I'm a Magic the Gathering player, and Todd Lockwood has done a lot of artwork for MTG cards, including the dragon Niv Mizzet, which is really cool. I have never been so enamored with a female lead in a book series before. I love Isabella so much. She's a feminist and a scientist, and in this book a mother, but she makes it no secret that her passions lie elsewhere, and she struggles with her complicated feelings towards her son and societal expectations of motherhood in her home country. She's honest and unapologetic about who she is she's independent and fiery of will, but also flawed in her stubbornness and haste and occasional lack of tact. She's such an interesting character, and I really felt a connection with her in her zealous passion for the things that she loves, her inner turmoil and avoidance of addressing her problems, and her I do what I want, sorry not sorry mentality that I'm trying to actualize in my own life. The other characters are great as well. You learn more about Tom Wilker and see his relationship with Isabella grow. Natalie isn't as developed as Isabella, but I like her and I hope she joins in on the adventure to come. There are also tons of local people within Bayembe and the Swamp of Moulin that make the world feel lived in, and they act as guides throughout the narrative to teach and lead the main cast. There's a lot of slice of life and survival tactics in this book, but they're literally in the middle of this perilous swamp where survival is far from guaranteed, and so it was fascinating and interesting to see how life is lived in a place that's so inhospitable to most. And this book does a good job of making basically everything that you read about relevant by the end of the book. Everything comes back full circle and makes sense when the pieces are all put together, which is really satisfying. I've never been really interested in politics or war tactics or economics, and this book has all three as connecting threads throughout the story, but it's done in a way that I was able to follow and understand despite all of the names and players being fictional. But because I'm not great at judging that kind of thing, I can't tell you if that's because it's simplistic or not, but I didn't find that aspect of the book hard to follow, which was great. And my only critique, really, which hasn't changed since the first book, is that despite some dumb decisions and horrible things happening to Isabella, in the end, she always comes out of situations really no worse for the wear. I feel like that's a common main character symptom. Not that that makes it like excusable or anything, and I'm not sure how it could be improved here, but I love her so much, and I think the story is imaginative and unique in its execution, so it isn't a deterrent to me reading the series, and I hope that it isn't for you either. The setting is exotic, the cast is very human, relatable, and interesting. There are several different plot lines going on that you're gently reminded of so you don't forget, and it just has a gritty, realistic feel that made me fall in love with the first book. I give this a full 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it, and this series is quickly becoming one of my new favorites. I'll be continuing the series with the third book called Voyage of the Basilisk, and I was looking at Marie Brennan's Goodreads page, and she has written other books which I'd like to read one day and see if I have a new favorite author as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the first or second book. I'd love to talk about it with you, and I'll see you next time. Bye!